It's already lonely at the top when you run an authoritarian state. But for Xi Jinping, loneliness isn't a weakness. It's a weapon. And right now, she is swinging it harder than ever. Before we go any further, if you love deep dives into power struggles, secret purges, and the real stories governments don't want you to hear, make sure you like this video and subscribe right now. What you're about to hear isn't surface-level news. It's the kind of story that explains where the world is actually heading. And I want to hear from you too. Do you think this is about corruption or fear? Drop your answer in the comments as we go. Because something just snapped at the very top of China's system, and it's shaking the foundations of the country's military. On January 26th, Newsweek described what happened next as a political earthquake. Overnight, Beijing went into quiet lockdown mode. Phones stopped ringing. Meetings were canceled. And inside the Chinese military, officers understood one thing very clearly. No one was untouchable anymore. At the center of the storm was Zhang Youxia, one of the most powerful men in China's armed forces. Zhang wasn't just another general. He was the vice chairman of the Central Military Commission, the body that directly controls the People's Liberation Army. That made him second only to Xi himself in the entire military command structure. For years, Zhang was considered a loyalist, a trusted insider. According to The Guardian, he was even seen as one of Xi's closest military allies, which is exactly why his sudden removal sent shockwaves through Beijing. Because in systems like China's, you don't remove someone that powerful unless you believe they are dangerous. Officially, the story is simple. The Chinese Communist Party claims Zhang was corrupt, that he abused his position, that he crossed red lines. The Chinese Communist Party has used that explanation many times before, and on the surface, it fits Xi's long-running anti-corruption campaign. But unofficially, behind closed doors and whispered through diplomatic back channels, something far darker is being discussed. A power grab, a brewing coup, or at the very least, a military leader who knew too much and controlled too much. Zhang wasn't alone. In the same sweeping move, she also cut down Liu Xianli, the chief of staff of the CMC's Joint Staff Department. Two senior figures. One strike. One message. She wasn't trimming branches. He was cutting out the spine. What makes this purge different from previous ones is scale and intent. This wasn't about cleaning up corruption at the margins. This was about neutralizing the last structure that could theoretically challenge Xi's total authority over the military. And then came the accusation that made even seasoned China watchers pause. According to the Wall Street Journal, Chinese officials have told PLA officers that Zhang allegedly leaked sensitive information about China's nuclear weapons program to the United States. Let that sink in. Not just corruption, not just bribery, but treason at the highest imaginable level. On top of that, the regime claims Zhang was also taking bribes in procurement decisions, almost as if they wanted a backup charge in case the nuclear accusation didn't hold up. The problem? The story doesn't add up. Journalist and analyst David Hochstein summed up the disbelief perfectly. If true, it would mean the U.S. somehow flipped one of China's most senior generals and extracted nuclear secrets from him. Not impossible, but staggeringly unlikely given how compartmentalized China's nuclear command structure actually is. Even more skeptical is Henry Gao, who pointed out that there are 1,000 reasons she might want Zhang gone, and none of them require him to have leaked secrets to Washington. Framing someone in a system like China's isn't difficult, especially when secrecy is absolute and evidence is whatever the party says it is. And here's the part that really matters. Zhang wasn't just a general. He previously headed the CMC's Equipment Development Department, the nerve center of military procurement. That role gave him deep influence over contracts, weapon systems, and modernization projects. It also placed him at the heart of past corruption investigations that already claimed major figures like former Defense Minister Li Shangfu. According to the National Interest, Zhang knew where the bodies were buried. He knew who benefited. He knew how the system really worked. And in authoritarian systems, knowledge is power. Which brings us to the real question, the one she may be asking himself late at night, surrounded by loyalists he no longer fully trusts. Was Zhang plotting against him? Or was she so afraid of the possibility that he acted first? Either way, the result is the same. China's military leadership has been shaken to its core. Officers are watching their backs. Loyalty tests are tightening. And the PLA is being reshaped into something even more dangerous, a force loyal to one man, not an institution. And this is only the beginning. Because once purges reach this level, they don't stop, they accelerate. And what happens next could determine not just the future of China's military, but the stability of the entire region. What makes this moment so dangerous isn't just who was removed, it's what was broken in the process. Until now, China's military operated on a fragile balance. Absolute loyalty to the party, yes, but also a quiet understanding among senior commanders that power was distributed just enough to keep the system stable. That balance ran through the Central Military Commission, which acted as both a command authority and a pressure valve. It ensured that no single figure, not even a president, could completely dominate every lever of force without consequence. That balance is now gone. By purging Zhang and his allies in one decisive stroke, she didn't just remove rivals. He collapsed the last internal firewall inside China's military system. Every remaining general now understands that rank, history, and loyalty offer no protection. Survival depends on proximity to Xi and nothing else. And that changes how armies behave. When officers stop trusting institutions and start fearing individuals, decision-making becomes distorted. Reports get softened. Failures get hidden. Commanders say what they think the top wants to hear, not what the situation demands. That's not speculation. That's how authoritarian militaries throughout history have begun to fail from the inside. What's happening now inside the PLA resembles less a professional armed force and more a court, one where whispers travel faster than orders. And the timing could not be worse. China is facing simultaneous pressure points. Taiwan, the South China Sea, internal economic stress, and a world that is no longer buying Beijing's reassurances. In moments like this, strong militaries rely on experience, confident leadership, commanders who can act independently within clear strategic boundaries. She just removed exactly that kind of leadership. The purge has already triggered subtle but telling reactions. Training exercises have been adjusted. Command rotations quietly reshuffled. Entire departments within the military bureaucracy have gone silent, reportedly awaiting clarification on who is now in charge and who might be next. That silence is not calm. It's fear, and fear spreads fast. What makes the situation even more volatile is that this purge didn't emerge from a battlefield failure or an external crisis. It came from inside, driven by suspicion. That matters, because regimes that start hunting enemies internally often begin seeing threats everywhere. Every delayed report becomes suspect. Every successful commander becomes a potential rival. Every independent thinker becomes a liability. This is how militaries lose initiative. Analysts are already warning that she may have secured short-term control at the cost of long-term effectiveness. A military that is politically pure but operationally timid is dangerous. Not because it's strong, but because it's unpredictable. When pressure hits, it may overreact or freeze entirely. And then there's the nuclear question. Even if the allegations about leaked secrets are exaggerated or entirely fabricated, the fact that such accusations were deployed at all sends a chilling message. It tells the officer corps that any failure can be rebranded as betrayal and any disagreement as treason. That's a line once crossed that's nearly impossible to uncross. Now consider this. China is expanding its military footprint faster than any nation on Earth. New ships, new missiles, new doctrines. All of it requires trust between political leadership and uniform command. That trust is cracking. Behind closed doors, some experts believe this purge signals that she is preparing for something big. Not necessarily because he wants conflict, but because he fears instability. Leaders who feel secure don't dismantle their own command structures. Leaders who fear being overthrown do. And that's the paradox she now faces. By eliminating potential challengers, he may have ensured that no one can stop him, but he may also have ensured that no one can correct him. History is unforgiving to leaders who confuse loyalty with competence. And as the PLA reshapes itself around fear instead of confidence, one question is becoming impossible to ignore. Is this purge the final consolidation of power, or the first visible crack in China's military foundation. Right now, Xi Jinping is sitting atop the most centralized command structure China has seen since Mao. On paper, that looks like strength. In reality, it's a single point of failure. Every major decision, strategic, operational, even symbolic, now funnels upward. That means hesitation below and pressure above. And in military systems, that combination is lethal. Here's why this matters far beyond Beijing. China's regional posture depends on speed, coordination, and confidence. Whether it's Taiwan, the South China Sea, or deterrence against the U.S. and its allies, the PLA must act decisively and flawlessly. But purges don't create decisive forces. They create paralyzed ones. Officers become risk-averse. Initiative dies. Commanders wait for permission that never comes. And when crises erupt quickly, delays become disasters. There's already evidence of this dynamic forming. Intelligence watchers have noted unusual pauses in large-scale exercises, abrupt reshuffles in command hierarchies, and overlapping chains of authority that didn't exist before the purge. These are classic symptoms of an organization trying to function while terrified of itself. And fear doesn't just slow things down, it distorts reality. When leaders rule through purges, bad news stops traveling upward. No one wants to be the bearer of failure, so problems get buried. Capabilities get exaggerated. Weaknesses go unreported. And eventually, the leader at the top starts making decisions based on fantasy instead of fact. That's how wars start by accident. Xi's inner circle is now smaller than ever. Trusted voices have been silenced, removed, or forced into public obedience. The people left aren't necessarily the most capable. They're the most loyal. And loyalty, while useful politically, is a terrible substitute for military competence. There's also a deeper, more dangerous signal here. Xi doesn't trust his own system anymore. Leaders who feel secure don't purge this aggressively. Leaders who feel confident don't dismantle entire command networks overnight. This looks less like consolidation and more like preemption. Xi's striking first because he believes someone else might strike him. That belief alone can destabilize everything. Because once a leader assumes betrayal is inevitable, every action becomes defensive, every move aggressive, and every silence suspicious. That mindset pushes regimes toward confrontation, not because they want war, but because they fear losing control if they don't act. The world has seen this pattern before. Late-stage authoritarian rule often looks calm on the surface, while pressure builds underneath. When it finally releases, it does so violently and without warning. China may not be there yet, but it is closer than it was. And here's the part that should make everyone pause. The PLA is not just China's military. It's the regime's survival mechanism. If trust between Xi and his generals continues to erode, he faces an impossible choice. Loosen control and risk disloyalty, or tighten control and risk incompetence. Neither path is safe. So as Beijing projects confidence, stages parades, and denies instability, the real battle may already be underway. One fought not with missiles or ships, but with paranoia, loyalty tests, and silent power struggles inside locked rooms. And if that internal struggle spills outward, the consequences won't stay confined to China. Because when authoritarian systems crack, they rarely crack quietly. If you want to understand where this is heading, how this purge could reshape China's next move, why the timing matters more than ever, and what signs to watch before the next shock. And now we arrive at the point where all the threads tighten, where power, fear, ambition, and paranoia collide. Because what Xi Jinping has done isn't just another purge. It's a declaration. A declaration that loyalty matters more than competence, that obedience matters more than truth, and that survival, above all else, comes before stability. History is brutally clear about what happens next. When a leader purges deeply enough, the system doesn't become safer. It becomes brittle. It loses flexibility. It loses honesty. It loses the ability to correct mistakes before those mistakes become catastrophes. And China's system, built on rigid hierarchy and centralized authority, is especially vulnerable to this kind of internal rot. Right now, every general still standing is asking the same silent question. Am I next? And when commanders are thinking about survival instead of strategy, armies don't win wars. They stumble into them. This is where the danger multiplies. A nervous leadership surrounded by yes men is more likely to miscalculate, more likely to overreact, more likely to see threats where none exist, and miss the real ones entirely. In that environment, drills become rehearsals, rhetoric becomes commitment, and posturing becomes irreversible momentum. That's how conflicts begin without intention. She has stripped away the buffers that once slowed rash decisions. The professional counterweights are gone. The internal brakes are failing. And what remains is a single man at the top of a massive military machine that now answers to fear as much as command. At the same time, the outside world is watching closely. Taiwan, the South China Sea, U.S. carrier movements, regional alliances hardening quietly in the background. Every one of these pressure points now intersects with a Chinese leadership that feels cornered, suspicious, and increasingly intolerant of uncertainty. That is not a recipe for restraint. And yet, the most chilling part isn't what we can see. It's what we can't. We don't know how many officers were quietly removed. We don't know how many commands are now run by placeholders. We don't know how many strategic reports are being softened before they ever reach Xi's desk. What we do know is this. Regimes don't purge at this scale unless something has already gone wrong, or they believe it soon will. So the real question isn't whether chaos has erupted. It's whether this was a final warning before something far bigger breaks. Because when authoritarian power grabs accelerate this fast, history tells us one thing with terrifying consistency. The next move rarely stays internal. If you want to understand what signals come next, what to watch for, what moments matter, and how this internal war inside China could spill onto the global stage, you need to stay with us. Subscribe now so you don't miss what comes next. These stories don't unfold in headlines. They unfold in patterns. And once you see the pattern, you'll realize why the next development could arrive suddenly and change everything. Leave your thoughts in the comments. Is she tightening his grip to prevent collapse, or setting the stage for one?